Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow. Pardon me if that scared you without the intro music. I'm your host, Giovanni Moschieri, Sports Media Director here at WXOU. And the GioMoShow is your home for all Oakland University sports and beyond on 88.3 FM. It's the GioMoShow, baby. So don't forget to follow WXOU on our MAB award-winning social media platforms, that including the following. That being TikTok, that being Instagram, that being Threads, and the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. I think they call it X now. And you can also follow me, Giovanni Moschieri, on those social media platforms as well. I'm on Instagram. We'll call it X, Threads, TikTok. I'm on all of it, baby. So be sure to give me a follow as well as WXOU. And for today's show, we got a lot planned for you guys. Now, it's going to be a little bit different than the show usually is. Usually the format the GioMoShow follows is a half hour of a combination of Oakland University sports and updates on the USPBL. However, this show is going to be a little bit different because we got one of the big ticket items at Oakland University sports, and we're going to be covering women's basketball for today's Oakland sports update. I guess you could technically call it an update, but it's been, if you haven't followed the last season, then it would be an update for you. But we're going to be covering their entire season, and we've been covering them a little bit closer on WXOU and been calling some of the games on WXOU as well and personally. So I have a little bit more to talk about in terms of women's basketball, so we're going to be spending the time talking about them. We got a couple of weeks of the USPBL to catch up on, as last week I unfortunately was not able to cover all of it, as we just had an interview with Angelo Grappito talking about the NFL, the Lions, his Bears, as well as the rest of the NFC North and beyond. So that is what was last week, and if you missed it, you can find it on YouTube and Spotify as well. All episodes of the GioMoShow are going to be posted later on those platforms, so you can watch it at your own convenience. There is now no way to miss the GioMoShow, is my way of saying it. But before we get started with all of that, we have to talk about Bart's Pizza. Bart Basilico reinvented his father's pizzeria business by putting it on wheels. I'm talking a pizza food truck, baby. Bart and his wife Lauren travel all around Metro Detroit, cooking up homemade pies made fresh to order in their 4-layered pizza oven on wheels. You can find them on their website at eatbartspizza.com and on Facebook and Instagram at Bart's Pizza. His last name is literally Basil, so you know he knows what he is doing. Make sure to grab a cannoli as well while you are there. It's Bart's Pizza. It's too good.
Yo, 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 I'm Jake Masucci from Jake's Takes. I wanted to talk a little bit about my show on my guy Giovanni's own show. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about Jake's Takes. I'm a student manager at Oakland University, and I kind of just talk all things sports. I talk a lot about the NBA, talk a little college basketball. We did a lot of March Madness stuff recently. We talked about NBA playoffs, NFL playoffs, talked a lot about the NFL draft. It's basically just an all things sports show. I really think you guys would enjoy it. And shout out to my guy Giovanni. Love him. But please check out Jake's Takes. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and then it's also available on its own YouTube channel. So please check out Jake's Takes, but please continue enjoying Giovanni's show.
And before we get started with the update on women's basketball, there is some breaking news in the world of Oakland University sports that go a little bit beyond the play on the court, beyond the play in the pool, on the field, and etc. Oakland unfortunately mourns the loss of a significant and powerful legendary figure in Oakland University sports. Tom Ford, legendary former head athletic trainer at Oakland University, who has cared for thousands of OU student athletes and served hundreds of coaches during his incomparable 30-year career. He unfortunately passed away this past Thursday, July 20th, after a hard-fought battle with ALS. And it's a great loss to Oakland University. I never knew him personally, but I know his impact, from hearing others talk about him. There was a ceremony during one of the basketball games this season honoring him, naming the training room after him. Now it is forever known as the Tom Ford Athletic Training Room. His name is going to be memorialized forever at Oakland University, and his impact knows no bounds from the testimonies that you hear from coaches, from athletes, from all of those in athletics. One of the quotes from athletic director Steve Waterfield says, "No one in the history of OU athletics has directly helped more student athletes and has been a trusted colleague to more coaches and staff than Tom," is the quote from Steve Waterfield. So a rest in peace to a wonderful man, one who has helped so many at Oakland University. May him and his family find peace in this hard time, and may his legacy live on forever. And I'm saying this sincerely, not knowing him personally, but it's just you feel the gravity when people talk about it. At that basketball game when they were honoring him, him and his family and everybody close to him gathered on center court, and Kevin Beers, who was reading, doing the announcing for the event, was moved to tears getting through that announcement. So a rest in peace, and a thank you to Mr. Tom Ford. So to move on from that, it's kind of a hard shift to move on from that, but we got women's basketball that we are going to be talking about today on the GioMoShow. And I was able to find a little bit more information on how the season went, as the Horizon League has posted a giant document of all of the little stats, little details, everything you got to know about the women's basketball season. So sifting through it a little bit, I got some stuff to talk about. So for a general season kind of update, one remarkable stat was that Oakland averaged 14.7 offensive rebounds per game, which ranked 18th nationally and led the Horizon League Women's Basketball Conference. As well as freshman Brooke Quarles-Daniels, who we have had on the GioMoShow earlier this summer. You can find that on YouTube and Spotify, or my interview with Brooke Quarles-Daniels. She was a delight to talk to. Macomb native, went to Lance Cruz North High School, just around the corner from Dakota High School, from when I went to high school. So, great to talk to a fellow Macomb native. So be sure to check that out on Instagram or on YouTube and Spotify as well, after the show, of course. Anyway, freshman of the year was Brooke Quarles-Daniels, and she led the Horizon League with 2.07 steals per game in the entire season. In addition to that, she was named to, obviously, the all-freshman team, which is what the freshman of the year is hopefully guaranteed. She was also named to second team all-league and was the only Grizzly to represent in first or second team. She also was the recipient of 6 Rookies of the Week awards throughout the entire season, which I believe tied for a school record, if not broke it. And 3 of those were won in consecutive weeks. From January 16th to January 30th, the Horizon League women's basketball freshmen were ruled by Brooke Quarles-Daniels. So congratulations to her. And not to overshadow some of the other Grizzlies that won such Players of the Week awards, on December 19th, the week of December 19th, Alexis Johnson of the Golden Grizzlies was awarded Player of the Week. And that means, looking at here, we got Player of the Week and Rookie of the Week for the week of December 19th. That was the game at home over Christmas break, or over holiday break, against Madonna University. So we'll cover that a little bit when we get to the game-by-game part of the segment here, which will be right now. I'm doing a little editing on the fly of the show. So we're going to get through the entire season here. Now, there's plenty of games to get through, so stick with me here. So Oakland, after their exhibition rounds, you could say, they started with 2 games at home on November 7th and then the 12th against Akron and Central Michigan, where the Grizzlies won both games. They beat the Zips 74-67, and they beat the Chippewas 71-60. And I always get mixed up with Central Michigan Chippewas because I went to the Dakota High School, and the rival high school was the Chippewa Valley Big Reds. So one is, Chippewas is the mascot of Central, but it's also the name of the high school. So it's so confusing to me. If I mess it up again, then you can understand why. But They beat Central Michigan 71-60 at home. I was in attendance for that game. You can find that on my Instagram. I posted about it afterwards. I got a sweet bucket hat from the Grizz gang as they were handing them out for the first 50 fans that were in the stands for that game. And I ain't giving it to anybody. I had friends that were begging me to give them the hat, and I go, oh, no. Oh, this is mine. So they followed that up with a trip to the Big Ten as they faced Michigan State and then Illinois in back-to-back games. And unfortunately, it was a rough showing for the Grizzlies. Against Michigan State, the Spartans were able to beat them 85-39. And Illinois was able to beat them with a similar score, 84-55. So the Grizzlies now are 2-2 in their, in their non-conference play. They then continue on the road to play in the TD Bank Classic, where they face Siena College and Stonehill, of which those two games they split, making them 3-3 so far on the season. And now we're at Stonehill was on November 27th. So now we're getting into the Horizon League play. Not the total Horizon League play, just a little hint, the hint of 2 games before the actual Horizon League season starts. They started on the road against Cleveland State and then against Purdue-Fort Wayne. And before coming home, they faced an out-of-conference opponent in Miami of Ohio. So against Cleveland State, who, spoiler alert, were the Horizon League champions, they beat Oakland in their house 77-54. But against Purdue-Fort Wayne, the Golden Grizzlies played a close one against the Mastodons and were able to win one on the road 66-64 in a game that kind of coincided with the men's season. The Cleveland State and Purdue-Fort Wayne were the first 2 opponents of the men's team as well. And the men, we'll talk about it next week, but just to talk about it now, the men went also to Purdue-Fort Wayne to play the Mastodons, and they lost the game in overtime in what was a very close game. And the women were there to avenge them, beating them 66-64. And on their road game against Miami of Ohio, this one was actually on ESPN3. This one was was televised nationally. The Golden Grizzlies had a great showing as they were able to beat the Red Hawks. I think they're the Red Hawks, 82-74. They then come home for that Madonna game that I was talking about on December 19th, where Alexis Johnson and Brooke Quarles-Daniels were players of the week, respective to player and rookie. They beat I don't know their mascot. It looks like a warrior. It looks like a golden knight. But Madonna was defeated 94-52 to the Golden Grizzlies. And finally, they're on the road once again. This is now December 21st and the 29th. Still in the holiday break, they were able to. The Golden Grizzlies fell to both Toledo and Green Bay, 74-44 and 64-42. Now they are 6-6. They're 500 for overall play, and in the Horizon League they are 1-2. So we now move on to now after that Green Bay game, we're gearing. This is Horizon League play now. This is for all the marbles. So they get one more road game. They get the Wisconsin trip wrapped up by facing Milwaukee on their way home. Away at the Panthers, the Golden Grizzlies face another loss, 65-49 to the Panthers. But when they came home with a vengeance as they faced Robert Morris in a home game that was a very exciting one. We called it on WXOU. I was there, and either Gavin Smilowski or Jake Masucci were with me. I believe it was Gavin Smilowski that was with me. I remember seeing their Robert Morris' star player, Phoenix Gideon. She was getting going in the first quarter, and it looked like she was going to be dominating all game as she had a height advantage against a lot of the Golden Grizzlies. But Golden Grizzlies were able to figure it out a little bit, figure it out defensively, put a stop to her, and win it 71-59. And in the following home game, we're now in January. Robert Morris was January 5th. Youngstown is now January 7th on a Saturday. They took the Penguins to overtime, where they unfortunately lost by 1 point, 68-67, in a game that was close the entire time. You could just tell that Youngstown State just had a pretty I just had to pick my words carefully. They had a really good team, and they played a very good game. And who was named the Defensive Player of the Year in the Horizon League was Lily Ritz of the Youngstown State Penguins. Had a great game, 18 points, 17 rebounds, 64% field goal percentage. And I'm only naming this stuff specifically because I was there and I saw it with my own eyes, and I could tell that Lily Ritz was deserving of Defensive Player of the Year as well as First Team All Horizon League. She was a stud that game. Now, after that game, they remain at home. They have a 4-game homestand in this stretch that I'm talking about right now. On January 13th, they face Northern Kentucky at home, and the Golden Grizzlies started a 3-game win streak off of this game. Against Northern Kentucky, they were able to win 74-67. Wright State came after January 15th. 73-68 was a win for the Grizzlies. And then they head to Callahan Hall in the heart of Detroit, where they beat the Titans 81-66 on their court for the 3-game win streak so far. So with that win streak, and with all the results of that chunk of games, they are now 10-8 and 5-4 in the Horizon League. I lost where I wrote it in the notes for a second there. So now they are back on the road. After that 3-game win streak, they unfortunately follow it with a 3-game losing streak. They faced the Jaguars of IUPUI. Then they were at home to Purdue Fort Wayne, and then at home to Cleveland State. In those 3 games, the Golden Grizzlies lost all 3, losing to the Jaguars 69-85, losing to the Mastodons 64-73, and losing to the Vikings 51-72. But they are back in action. Or forgive me, I had a little note about the Purdue Fort Wayne game. That one was called by me and Jake Masucci on WXOU. And you can also check out my interview with Jake Masucci on the GioMoShow YouTube channel, the host of Jake's Takes. And I'll tell you what, Jake Masucci, calling the game with him was a fantastic experience because if you guys don't know him, not only is he the host of a sports podcast mainly focused on basketball, Jake's Takes, as it is called, but he is also a member of the student management team on Oakland's men's team. And he has been surrounded by coaching, surrounded by basketball his entire life. And when I had him on the broadcast as the color commentator, I was doing play-by-play, you could just tell that he knew everything that was going on. He knew calls that I didn't even know existed. He was calling different zones and strategies and stuff that me, as a little bit of a novice in the basketball world, had a very hard time keeping up with. But Jake was just a fantastic partner to have by your side when you're calling basketball. So it was a great game to call. In that game, you had Amelia Brahmanshankle of the Mastodons, which was a name that I had to repeat so often. Amelia Brahmanshankle, as she was just all over the court. She was a star player for the Mastodons. She had 24 points, 9 rebounds on 60% shooting. She had a night for herself in the arena. But now moving on, we are now in the month of February. Things are ramping up here in the Horizon League play, and we're still at home for the Grizzlies. In the arena, they faced the 2 Wisconsin teams. February 3rd was Milwaukee. February 5th was Green Bay, and Oakland was able to win only one of those games. Against Milwaukee, they were able to win 74-71, but against Green Bay, the Phoenix, they got them 50-70. In that game. Moving to a road trip to Youngstown State on February 9th against the Penguins. It was not the same story as it was in the arena where the Golden Grizzlies took them into overtime. Rather, it was all Penguins that game. Grizzlies lose 62-85. And as it currently stands as of February 9th, they are 11-13 overall and 6-9 in the Horizon League. They stay on the road for a trip to Robert Morris in Moon Township, Pennsylvania. And against the Colonials, not the best performance. 43-74 was the final score. They then come back home to the arena to face the Jaguars one more time. IUPUI, this game also being on ESPN3, televised nationally. Another great game, rather, for the Jaguars. Jaguars were able to beat the Grizzlies 87-73. But we wrap things up. The final 3 games of the Horizon League, or of the regular season, I should say, They faced Detroit Mercy in the arena for rivalry week, for senior night, for televised on WMYD Detroit, the big game for the big rivalry game. And this was a game I attended it not as a commentator, not as a fan, but rather as a reporter and as a student, as I was in Gary Gilbert's sports journalism class. I love that class, and he was such a great teacher. He took us all to that basketball game to cover it, and Coach Tunget and a couple of the players were kind enough to do a post-game press conference for us, which is something they don't normally do. But for us, they gave us that opportunity to talk to them after the game. And it was a close game. I'm telling you, it was close throughout the entire game. The game was within single digits the entire time. I remember Detroit Mercy had such a huge turnover problem that game. Even though they had control of the ball for a lot of it, they kept turning it over, and that kept the Grizzlies in the game. And as the game was going on, it was trading 1 point after another, back and forth in the fourth quarter, and finally with the Grizzlies having the ball, they needed the shot to win the game. It was in the hands of Brooke Quarles-Daniels, and with 4 seconds left, they got the ball in her hand. She shoots it, and it goes in to give us the 1 point lead with 4 seconds left, and from there it was a manic sprint to the other side of the court, but Detroit Mercy was not able to get there in time, and the Grizzlies win a close one, 66-65, to complete the sweep against the Titans for women's basketball. And of course, we got to talk about it with Tunget, with Linda Van Schaik, with, I believe it was just Linda that was there for the post-game press conference. Forgive me if another one of you ladies were there at the press conference. It was a while ago. It was February 20th. Give me a break here. We're at July 27th. Come on now. Anyway, that was a great game and a great win. The last regular season home game for the season. And now we move to February 23rd, a road trip against the Raiders of Wright State University. They hand the Grizzlies another loss. 75-83 was the final score. Then in the final game of the regular season, the third game on ESPN 3, nationally televised, the Golden Grizzlies were able to win a close one, 79-76, to give them a final regular season record of 13-16 overall and 8-12 in the Horizon League. Good enough to get them 8th seed in the Horizon League tournament. And to give you the rest of the rankings for the Horizon League, or at least I'll give you the seedings, it was Green Bay that was able to win the regular season. The Phoenix were first seed. Cleveland State follows in second. IUPUI was third. Youngstown State was fourth, and then Northern Kentucky was fifth. Wright State was fifth. Purdue-Fort Wayne was the sixth seed. Milwaukee was the seventh. Oakland was the eighth. Wright State was the ninth. RMU was 10, and Detroit Mercy was 11. And Oakland, who do they face in the first round of the Horizon League? None other than the Wright State Raiders, a team that they played just a few days, or just 5 days before facing them in the tournament. And they got the chance to play at home in the arena one last time. And by me saying one last time, I kind of spoiled the end of the game. Unfortunately, the Grizzlies facing the Raiders were not able to continue in the Horizon League tournament because they fell to the Raiders 69-79 in a game that was a lot closer than the 10-point lead would indicate in the final score. It was, at halftime, Oakland actually had the lead 41-37 at halftime by scoring 29 points in the second half alone. It was the Grizzlies. But then the defense of the Raiders just locked them up. The offense wasn't there for the Grizzlies to follow up such a fiery quarter, and it ended up that 10-point deficit at the end of the game. Grizzlies end their season with a loss to the Raiders, 69-79. And to give some overall stats here, I did some digging to kind of wrap up the season here. An unfortunate ending to lose in the first round. You had Raquel Ferrer-Bernard and Brianne Beatty was their last game in the arena. They were celebrated on Senior Day after the Detroit Mercy game, and they meant so much to this team, and it was a shame to see them go. Brianne Beatty is actually still continuing her basketball career I just unfortunately can't remember which university it was, but if you find her on Twitter, you could probably find what school she chose to go to for her 5th season. But to go over some of the Golden Grizzlies stats, Brooke Quarles-Daniels was able to lead the team in scoring with 12.1 points per game. Alexis Johnson was at a flat 11, and Brianne Beatty was at a consistent 10.7 points per game. Brooke Quarles-Daniels led in offensive rebounds. I only mention that because if you remember at the top of the topic, the Golden Grizzlies were 18th nationally in offensive rebounds, and Brooke Quarles-Daniels collected 91 in the season in a 5.5 rebounds per game, which tied the team along with Alexis Johnson, both who had 5.5 rebounds per game. Linda Van Schaik took the most threes for the Grizzlies, 163 threes taken in the season, made 42 of them for a 25.8 percentage, but for high volume three-point shooting, the efficiency record or the efficiency crown goes to Alexis Johnson, who made 30 of her 88 three-pointers, which is good for 34.1% from the three. And Brianne Beatty, just to mention her once again, Jack as they call her, the captain as we call her, played and started in all 30 games this season for the Golden Grizzlies. Nobody on the team has done so. Miriam Abizam was just one game short of such an honor, as well as Brooke Quarles-Daniels and Alexis Johnson tied at 25 starts of the 30 games this season. Just looking through the scoreboard and giving you kind of a sense of how the Grizzlies have done statistically overall. So that's been your update on women's basketball. And wouldn't you know it, we're at exactly the 6:30 mark. We're going to take a break here on 88.3 FM WXOU. You're listening to The GioMoShow, and I'm your host, Giovanni Moschieri. When we come back from these messages from WXOU, we're going to get into it. We're going to get into the past 2 weeks of the USPBL. We got some baseball to cover from Jimmy John's Field as we get ready for the Hoppers game being played at 7 o'clock here at WXOU. They face the Unicorns, and we'll talk all about it, the month of July, the past 2 weeks of the USPBL, when we come back here on The GioMoShow. We'll be right back.